Okay, wonderful.
Okay.
So welcome, Ashley Russell. And Chandra's just going to go ahead and share with us a little bit about her background and how she started this program with her good friend. There's Ashley Dunklin.
All right.
Wonderful.
Okay. Hey, hello. How are y'all? Thank you, Jamie, for allowing me to come and speak to your students today. A little bit about me. I am Shawns Brown-Stewart. I am from Mobile, Alabama. I've been in this work for a very long time. And let's see, I know right after college, I was just kind of lost and confused, and I needed to figure out like what I needed to do. I graduated from Xavier in New Orleans. I went there because they were #1 in placing Blacks in medical school. I knew I liked psychology, so I thought, I will be a psychiatrist. That was as simple as that decision went. I got probably third or fourth year at Xavier, and I was like third year summer because they made you do summer. They suggested, strongly encouraged that you go and do summer programs. And so I was at a summer program at UAB. And I remember sitting there, and it was with the medical school, and thinking like, hello, Jessica Norwood. And thinking like, I absolutely don't want to do this. So I ended up back home. I got on a crisis line, and I had my first call, and it was, what are you gonna, hey, I got a gun to my head. What are you gonna do for me? And I talked to that person for 4 hours and thought like, this is the work that I want to do. And so working in crisis, and then we ended up working with crisis, and then also working with the rape crisis program. We ended up merging with Family Counseling Center, where I became the director. And I've been doing the work for a long time, and I had a really good friend, Jessica Norwood, and she and I would go out and hang out, and we would talk about like how we could change the world. And I'll let Jessica introduce herself and tell a little bit about her background, because she is absolutely brilliant. And so she and I would talk. And so Jessica can tell you she's been in the world of nonprofit. She's been in the world of politics. She's now in the world of finance, and how to re-engineer how we look at several different things. And so she and I were talking, and she was like, hey, we just need to do something. We need to start something. And so from the background that I am, is very just kind of cut and dry, vanilla counseling. This is what we do, wraparound services, very nonprofit work, social service work. And I knew I wanted to do something different. And that was a part of our conversation. Jessica was very cool. She was doing all these things to me on the sly. She was like, we need to write a list of expectations that we have of each other, which is really pretty brilliant. And my top one was like, we remain friends always. And the second one was, I don't want to do what I've always done. I want to do something different. I want to do something exciting. Because like what I deal with is suicide, homicide, rape, like the depth of trauma every single day. And I knew like I didn't want to do that on my spare time. And so, what started this conversation was in 2014, there was a slew of domestic violence homicides in African-American women. And in 2015, it was more. In 2016, it ended up being probably to date, if we count Black women and white women, it's 47. 36 are Black, 11 are white. And we knew like, you know what? Who's doing something about this? And we kept looking around, and we kept asking, and we kept wondering, and we kept waiting, and it was no one. And so Jessica and I had lunch at a Panera, where she had the table beautifully scaped, because that is her talent, and among many. And she said, you know what? We need to start the Society of Clotilda. Clotilda is the last slave ship that came into Mobile. And maybe all the Black women in Mobile are not from the Clotilda, but they're from a Clotilda. And we need to raise awareness about this. And so that was our next step. So I'll stop right there and let Jessica introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Well, thanks for letting me drop in on your talk, Chandra. And Jamie, hey, how you doing? Thank you for letting me come in on this talk as well. I don't know exactly where you are or what the process of all of this is, Chandra, but I'm for everybody joining. I am Jessica Norwood, and Chandra's co-founder and real best friend in the whole wide world. As Chandra mentioned, I'm from Mobile. I'm from Pritchard. I grew up 3 miles away from where the slave ship Clotilda, the cargo ship Clotilda was found, and have a long history. My father was the mayor of Pritchard, and a lot of the preservation and story keeping that was a part of Africa Town really came from the leadership of Black mayors in the city of Pritchard, keeping that story going and alive alongside of community members who also equally kept that work going. And so in that area, there is in Pritchard, the Africa Town State Park, which I was a part of, helping to be a part of designing ideas and things around that. So the conversation about Clotilda and Africa Town and our communities really came up really high for me. And it was at that time that Chandra was mentioning everything that she shared with you about the high levels of domestic violence, homicides that were happening. And one of the things I thought was, what's the through line between these things? What does it mean where we've all, no matter where we've come from, whether, as Chandra said, whether we were descendants of the Clotilda or not, but what we inherited as far as the violence and trauma looks like domestic violence, homicide. It looks like this disposability of these Black women's bodies over and over and over again. So there's this history that we have to contend with. And I thought it would be really interesting to figure out a way to talk about how we heal from that. Where do we go on the other side of all of this? And so Society of Clotilda became a way that we wanted to approach that we wanted to talk about the stories of our not only our resilience, but also the pathways of what our healing would look like. We wanted to raise much more awareness about what was happening with Black women's health and our well-being. And we wanted to do it in a way that felt liberatory, that didn't feel like we were stuck inside of the same paradigm, the same story, the same whatever. And so we started off with a party, actually. And I don't know, we're probably more known for the party part than all of the other work that goes on behind the scenes, but that's okay, because what we wanted people to do was to feel beautiful, to feel joy, to feel love, to feel like this conversation, although it is the heaviest conversation one could ever have with one another, is possible to have this kind of depth of conversation with each other. And that was really the cornerstone of it. And my work, and as Chandra mentioned, I started off in elected politics. And so I ran political campaigns and all over the country and in Washington, D.C. and policy and organizing in that regard. And then and did the nonprofit thing, have been a nonprofit executive director for a while. And like anybody who's in a nonprofit mix, if anybody here is in that zone or place or whatever, you're going to run up against very quickly that in order for your work to have a level of sustainability, people are going to tell you, well, you have to basically move that conversation into the marketplace, to the private marketplace. And that public dollars are just getting truncated left and right. And you're left with a lot of direct services where people really want to bean count. Did you do this? Did you do that? But they miss the holistic part of it. They miss the actual story underneath it. And we couldn't afford to keep letting that happen. And so we started thinking, what could we do to marshal resources? And we knew everybody loved Mardi Gras. And so we said, hey, give me your Mardi Gras money and I will move that Mardi Gras money into sustainable programs that are culturally relevant for women in our community. And that's what we did. So, all right, back to you, Chandra. I don't know where we were going with that.
No, I mean, I think that was perfect, because what we did, I mean, and I think it's a great conversation, because often when we're in school, you went to school for nonprofit public administration, and I got a master's in counseling. I think it's good information to know, like, you go to school and they textbook tell you, like, you do this, you do this, you do this, but nobody really tells you that you can color outside of the lines. And so Jessica likes to term herself an interrupter, a system interrupter. Did I get that right? Or did I say it wrong?
Disruptor.
Disruptor. Interrupter.
I am called that. I never would have picked the word disruptor, but whatever. But yeah, that's the word.
But I think what that means is that like you
Yes.
are the person that is willing to say, you know what, like this doesn't work. And often we get so stuck, particularly like if you're bound by how you finance something, like that's huge. Particularly if you're going into counseling, if you're going into like psychology, if you're going into any of those fields where you're providing, we'll say, a direct service to a client, you get bound into this is how it's funded, and you're not, and because you're so in the grind of providing the service and doing it right and writing the notes and the accountability and the quality and all of that, you aren't able to lift your head up and really think about there are other ways to do this and you have permission to do like
That's right.
you know, the fun thing with Jessica is she's just like, to hell with it. And so like I'd be like, can we do this? And she was like, who said we couldn't? Like who told you couldn't? Like, I don't know. Who told me I couldn't do that? And so it's very freeing to get yourself around people who think very differently than you. So I would absolutely recommend that, because it pushes you beyond your boundary and it pushes you outside of a box. And you know, I had a joke that I posted like on Facebook that she and I were sitting having cocktails, and she was like, we should have capes and crowns, because Jessica's also very much so like bourgeois. So she loves everything pretty and everything fancy. So she's really been trying to wear a cape in public for a very long time.
The longest time.
And so it became, okay, so how can we mix, I would say culture and fashion, how can we mix that with a social mission, you know, because Mardi Gras was started in Mobile, and we love it and our community loves it. And what was cool about this intervention is that you can actually do it in any community that you want to do it, and just figure out what the community loves, figure out what they really like, and you can give it a social mission in some capacity. So I think that was a very cool thing about it. So as Jessica was on the creative end, I was on the, I'm going to run around to everybody in the community and talk to them and see what they think and see what they say. And know that the first time you do an intervention, people will not give you money. So just know that up front, you will not get paid for it. You will have to cobble and scheme and beg, and it may come out of your own pocket. So we got to the point toward the end when we planned for the brunch. It was funny because we were like, we just threw our friends a party. So that's what we did. We
in fairness, I don't want you to tell everybody the story this way. These are students. And who's the audience, right?
Yeah, it's students.
Okay. I don't want y'all to learn it this way. Okay. So what I want to say is I would say that's gorgeous to recognize that, you know, in any venture or anything that you're going to do, you're going to put seed capital into it. Okay. And that is not a wrong thing to think about. You're in business, whether it is a nonprofit business or a for-profit business, it is a business, and it requires an upfront capital investment, whether you made the donation of $100 or somebody else. That's how business gets started. So don't romanticize or don't undersell. That's a part of it. And you should be prepared to go into that. And you should be prepared to put resources into what you say you love. Nobody is going to join you until they see what they call your skin in the game, so to speak, right? So I want you to think about it in that way. And then we've been up and running for 1 year inside of Mobile, doing something that's been relatively innovative. And we set a financial goal for ourselves, and we crushed that financial goal. So I don't want you to imagine that it was tough. What was tough about it, I think, is really the perceptions of what people believe is possible for them. That was probably the harder thing than raising the money inside of it. I mean, we did look at each other a couple of times and just sort of like, oh, and I'm grateful for the capacity that Lifelines was able to bring to get going, because it really was our first sort of investor inside of this to say, okay, here's a little runway space to get going until we could until we could finish raising out the rest of our funds. And we did do that. And I'm grateful for those partnerships. I think partnerships are so important like that because it can help you jump over a lot of different hurdles and get more capacity sooner than later. So take away from what everything Sean just said, what I want to leave you with is an investment of your seed money in any business is required. Don't ever imagine it's not. Don't get scared that you put in your $100 or whatever it is. That's okay. And find your partnerships that can help you with some capacity because they can help even out some of the risk of getting something going in the beginning. So find an established organization or somebody who is doing something that is close to what you want to do and present it to them and say, hey, I have an idea and I think I can raise my money for this, but could you let me use your office space? Or maybe you could serve as an advisor or something, because that name brand will get you in the door to get a check. And you want to have it. You may not have the money right away, but you can use your social capital, right, to be able to help open up those doors. And so that's just a tidbit for everybody who's out here. That was a lesson for you and how that happens. Okay, thank you, Chandra.
So then once we decided what we wanted to do, we had lots of conversations. And I think that was the great thing about being in partnership with Jessica, because it really helped me, I think of things in a very different way, like I told you guys. And so like really sitting down and discussing what are our expectations, sitting down and really planning out, like, what could these interventions, be? I typically write grants every day, and I'll tell you, I hate theories of change. And so Jessica and I were sitting there and she was like, what is our theories of change? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's just do this event. I don't know. But really walking through that and really talking through, like, what do we want the end to be? And so that was a really cool process because I love visioning. So really to sit there and say, you know what? We want the women that come to our event. We want this event to center on Black women because there are no organizations in our city that centers on Black women's mental health, wellness, and health. And we didn't know that. I'm running around town. I was like, I hope somebody tells me something different. They did not. There are none, right? So then that was the first thing. The next thing we were like, so we want women to feel, we believe if you feel joy and love, many of the things that happen with domestic violence and sexual assault and all of these things may not happen. If we all come from a space and place of joy, of love, of health, of just this level of community and positivity and us being there for each other, things could look very different. I can't say it'll total wipe out. I can't say it'll total happen, but it could absolutely lessen the numbers. So what if we did that? And that's what, when Jessica was talking, that was the tough part. We didn't know that people were not ready to love themselves. We thought love is beautiful. Everybody wants to love themselves, right? No. And not in the capacity that we were really thinking of and that we were really talking about, because it's really like deep work. It's really like, if I've never been in a truly healthy relationship, whether it's with my family, whether it's with myself, whether it's with, my peer group, the people that I love, that I have intimate relationships with, if I've never done that, I don't have a framework for it. So I can't connect with you on that level. I can't, it's not that I don't want to, I've never seen it. So that was the part of the process. Oh, that photo was Society of Clotilda Day. I always have to say that because that's fun. We got a proclamation that made Joe Cane Day Society of Clotilda Day for us. So yay. So anyway, that was the part that was really a little bit more of a push and pull than we had imagined. So we had planned to do this brunch. We wanted to be the Sunday before Mardi Gras. And it was just really, and we wanted to like fold in some elements of Mardi Gras that we really hadn't seen. And so you can see elements like if you go to New Orleans or if you go into the Caribbean, and we can say more Afro-Caribbean traditions where the dress is very different, where capes and crowns are quite normal. And we're like, nobody does that here. Why won't we do that and celebrate and connect us with the Black and Brown folk who celebrate Carnival across the diaspora? So that was one of the things that we did. And then, we always have to give a plug. We had a Grammy award-winning music artist who was absolutely just a godsend. She was amazing. Avery Sunshine came and just blessed the entire crowd, like sobs and tears and hugs. And it was just a moment that was magical. So that was our brunch that we did, and that was pretty cool. Jessica, you want to tell them a little bit about like what we did after that?
Well, you know what I wanted to say, because I felt like I interrupted something you said. You did go out, Chandra, and you met with many people when we first got this idea going. You know, in those phone calls and conversations and meetings, to sit down one-on-one with people and say, here's what we're thinking. And part of that assessment of, was there another organization out there, but also just to let people know what we were thinking of and to invite them in whatever level of participation that could be. And a lot of what I will say, no matter what creative ideas or things that we came up with, what mattered was that you went and you spoke to them, you know, Chandra. And so I don't want to miss making a note of how powerful those one-on-one conversations were. And we did learn a lot about what people's expectations were. You know, a lot of times, if you're always kind of marginalized in a lot of different ways, it's hard for you to even speak up when people come to you and say, what would you like? How would you like to feel? Would you like to feel good? Can we help you with something? It's hard to trust it or to know that that's even possible. So we did encounter a lot of that. And it made Chandra and I, you know, weepy-eyed sometimes and a little sad, but always really grateful because women showed up. This was a really powerful day because when people walked into the actual Golf Quest Museum, Chandra had come up with this fantastic idea where this team, the staff that was there, would ask women, may I adorn you? And I had friends who cried at that moment because they just couldn't believe that somebody was seeing them and making them visible and noticing them as a queen, as somebody of, you know, to be honored. And every woman got that when they came. It didn't matter who that woman was. If you came there, you were getting that treatment. It lasted, that memory lasted with people. And so we finished this event right at the time that the world was closing down and right at the time we understood that coronavirus was happening. And I took that time, and we took that time, Chandra and I, to deepen with our elders. There were Black women who have been leading movement work around Black women's health and wellness and healing outside of the oppression that we've experienced. And there were some women who were in their 70s who have been doing this work since Berkeley and Angela Davis and the Panthers and all that stuff. And so we sat in community with these women for months thinking about how do we now come out and design a program now that we've experienced what this is and where some of the push and a pull is inside of these women's hearts. How do we come up with something that fits them? And we talked about building this program and this idea and weaving in policy and storytelling. And what we came out with was How I Wear My Crown, which was an 8-week session. Inside of coronavirus, we just sort of pushed it online at that point. We were thinking we wanted to, you know, originally we had always had in mind that we would do program work like this, but we thought we'd be rolling this out in public, you know, in person, excuse me. And instead we did it as a Zoom. And we had Desiree Attaway, a fantastic, you know, diversity, equity, inclusion leader and powerhouse, kick us off and spoke. One of the things that we've done really well throughout all of this is we would have speaker series going on. So we've had LaTosha Brown with Black Voters Matter speak. We've had Monica Simpson with Sister Song. We had Cassandra Welshland with Mississippi Black Women Voters. We've had so many different speakers. And in this series, we had Kim Love and Jawandalyn, what's Jawandalyn's last name? Brooks, thank you. Yeah, Jawandalyn Brooks doing Every Woman Has a Story to Tell. And this is where it really kicked off because Kim Love and Joanna, both of them respectively hold the state seats around domestic violence and sexual assault conversations and bodies of work. And they work with agencies that do that kind of work across the state. And they talk to us about not only the policy challenges and what's going on in the world and how women are seeing themselves inside of these programs, but they talked about their own narratives and how that brought them into this work. And we all instantly just saw ourselves inside of that. Like every woman has a story to tell, no matter what that is, we all have something to talk about. And it was really powerful. We then went in with Be Present. And we talked about knowing yourself outside of oppression. Where do you find that joy? And how do you talk to each other when we've been so deeply wounded at a point? And we were held, y'all, in a community of elder Black women in that space. This is Margarita, who wasn't on the call, but Lily Allen. There were about 8 different Black women who came on those phone calls, and they sat in circle in community with us. So we had this intergenerational play that was inside of this work, and always through Society of Clotilda. One of the things that was so great about the brunch was mothers and daughters came together, and and other elders. When we laughed, but we laughed that we paid all of our friends to come, but technically we did not. We got some good checks that allowed for us to bless our friends and families to come.
We did.
So at any rate, we also did listen to others in a conscious and present state. And so it really is like, again, how am I wearing my crown? How am I showing up to not only care for myself, but to be a space upon which I could care for other people as well. And then taking that care and using it as a way to amplify our voices. And so we had Melanie from the Burnt Change Fund.
Women's Fund in Birmingham.
Women's Fund it's the Community Foundation of Birmingham, and the Women's Fund is housed there. And so Melanie ran that, and she came and talked to us about some of the policy work that they're doing around the state and how we leverage our voices, particularly around these issues of domestic violence and sexual assault, and broadly women's health, how we support that. So, and then the ending part of this really sweet time was really pivoting and saying, we want to open up this conversation about how we care for ourselves, how we tell our stories. And we want to do that using a public art piece, an art piece that would live in the world. We want you to be able to come to a place and feel the restorative energy that we're talking about, the energy that we're calling in for ourselves. We want you to feel that always. And so at the end of this session, we ended up bringing in a fantastic duo from the Kinfolk Collective, Sage Crump and Muthi Reed, who are cultural strategists, fabricators, art makers, based out of New Orleans. And they've been helping us on our journey of discovering what is this art piece that we're going to be putting out, and what does it look like, and how does it take in the voices of all of the women in our community as well. And so we've been having design sessions since November. I think we did one in December as well, around this. And we have more design sessions in the month of March, 2 more coming up, around what the bench will look like, but also how we incorporate telling our stories alongside of that art piece. So the full totality of Society of Clotilda is really being a community of women that are centering Black women's health and their wellness, that we want to invest in one another. We want to invest our resources in each other. We want to invest our time, our talent. We want to make sure that every community has an opportunity to do some of the healing work and build the kinds of systems around this where they can support each other in that healing journey, or how I wear my crown pieces of work that we talked about. So I'll stop talking.
You did brilliant. Thank you.
Okay.
That was brilliant. And I think like the final piece that we are working on is the one I get most excited about, and it's bum bum bum. We are building monuments to Black women. So this started again with another conversation Jessica and I had, and I think she sent it to me like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and she was like, somebody should do a friendship bench in this. We should do a friendship bench. And it was called a granny bench. And so they would have like these beautiful, and Jamie, I'll send you the link and you could send it to the class. But because we don't have time to watch the video, but it's a beautiful video of, so what happens, there's a psychiatrist in Zimbabwe and he had a client die by suicide. He was one of 13 in the country. And he said, you know what, this has to stop. This absolutely has to stop. We have to find a new way. And so what he did is he created a culture of care around grannies and benches. And so he trained the grannies in just basic talk therapy. And so if you would come and you would sit on the bench in your village and you would say, hey, this is what's going on. I don't have a job. I don't have a husband. I don't have a car. I don't have any of these things. And she would say, you know what, according to the checklist, you have 6 of the 10 symptoms of depression. And I would like for you to come see me 4 times, once a week for the next 4 weeks. And they would come because what do we see? Again, as Jessica said, the intergenerational. So we would see these women as just spaces and places of wisdom. And so we could trust them and we could believe in them. And so he trained them in how to listen and how to be thoughtful and how to provide resources and that sort of stuff. And they would come. And what they found is 80% of the folks that came to the bench, they actually felt better. They actually got better. The cooler, that's absolutely amazing. The cooler piece that we saw around the bench is that the bench was a community art piece. So in some places it might be a regular bench. In some places it may be carved out of just this most beautiful wood. It just looked very different in very different places. And so we started talking like, how cool would it be if we could create these benches? And we can put them in spaces that are like gardens of Eden for Black and brown women. And so what it would look like, it would be, they could do yoga there. They could, meet there. They could sit and they could talk to their sister friends about whatever it is that they're going through and whatever it is that they need. And so that would be, and so that's the phase that we're working on right now. Hopefully our goal is that the bench will be unveiled on Juneteenth of this year. And we have several different, additional activities around it, but it's really, really cool because this is a space and place, because what we found, what isn't as robust in Mobile as we'd like it to be is, the Black art scene. So if we don't have Black arts, then how can we raise like, this is an issue or this is a problem, or how can we see, where our community is through a way that may touch us in a very different way, right? Instead of us just talking about this is what poverty is, or talking about this is what abuse is. If I see a picture, I'm moved in a very different way. If I see something you've created, I'm moved in a different way. So really connecting all of this to that piece and having a level of art activism and what we're doing is where we're headed in this phase. Anything you want to add to that, Jessica?
No, I think that's right. No addition.
So we have talked fast and a lot. And thank you, Jessica, because she popped on, had no idea what she was going to do. I was like, just join the call. We're going to talk about Society of Clotilda. I don't really know. So do you guys have any questions for us?
This is amazing. Thank you both, Jessica and Chandra. Like I could hear like a collective clap in my head where everybody's like, oh my gosh, it's been amazing. I want to turn off the recording so people can feel comfortable asking questions, and we can, before we end up closing out the recording, if you can tell people if they're interested in getting involved, like what they can do or how they can contact you.
Yeah, they can email me at cbrown@lifelinesmobile.org, cbrown@lifelinesmobile.org. They could also check us out because we're on Facebook and on Instagram, so they can connect with us or message us through that. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going to turn off the recording.